The era of cash crunch is here again, and for weeks, Nigerian banks have been implementing capped cash withdrawals. Meanwhile, the automated teller machines, ATMs, appear to be turning into display sales of, artistic galleries. Now, indeed, cash withdrawal limits have become the rule in most bank branches for over-the-counter and ATM transactions. While mobile money agents who have become familiar sights across Nigeria with handy point-of-sales machines have become the major sources of cash. It used to be a refuge for millions of unbanked citizens, especially in the rural area in Nigeria. But right now, as we speak, it is the go-to place for major Nigerians right now. Well, generally, the cash crunch is negatively affecting small businesses, artisans, daily wage earners, leaving individuals struggling to meet their basic needs amidst soaring inflation, high cost of living, and so on. Just recently, the House of Representatives called on the Central Bank of Nigeria to address the situation as soon as possible. And of course, the CBN governor has been reacting to basically all of this. Well, joining me right now in the studio to look critically at this conversation is Supriela Membrem. He is an economic analyst and he joins me live in our Lagos studio this morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
Right. So tell me, what do you make of all of this? Because the CBN has called this an artificial scarcity. What's your assessment of this?
Well, the central bank and the bankers, this association of bankers, are having a back and forth. The association of bankers are saying that the central bank is to blame for the scarcity in the naira, that they are not able to meet up with demand because of the quote-unquote festive season. On the other hand, the central bank is saying that the bankers are complicit in not providing cash. So you see, there's a sort of a confusion that is, that's happening. Now, the thing is this: if you look at this issue, the bankers are not exempt, or they are not exempted from the blame. Also, the central bank is not also exempted from the blame. There's enough blame to go around. There's also enough blame to go around the POS operators who are taking advantage. But then again, you see POS operators are just taking advantage of this situation. Wherever there's a problem, there will be people that will provide solution. So I mean, the POS, the lacuna has created the POS economy, will I say, or a parallel banking, system that is now sort of becoming the mainstream. When it's supposed to be something that is augmenting the mainstream, is now becoming the mainstream.
The question is, how did we get here? Because just as I said the other time, usually when we talk about the POS, it's usually for unbanked citizens, persons who live in the rural area. But right now, it's more or less like the major go-to place for majority of Nigerians. I, for one, cannot remember the last time I went to the ATM to make use of it. How did we get here?
So you see, the problem is this: it's trust. There's a trust deficit. Banking itself is built on trust. That when I give you my money, I can access my money when I want. Now, what has happened over the unfortunate incidents that have happened over the years, has made citizens lose trust, in the banking system to hold their money and also have access to that money when they need it. But then again, you ask of the issue of how will I put it? This what they call cashless policy. So the slow integration of the cashless system into our economic model is also part of this problem, right? So the central bank embarked on a cashless policy that was under the former central bank governor, which coincided with the Naira redesign policy. I mean, Naira redesign policy was just to sort of take out the excess cash in flow, but then our infrastructure couldn't handle it. And when I talk of infrastructure, I talk of the banking infrastructure. Because again, cashless policy works on efficient banking system. It will work with the tools, the infrastructure, the tech infrastructure that enables it. For instance, the microfinance banks and the micro banks we have, they don't have issues with reversing transfers made that didn't go through, through the interbank settlement system. But our mainstream banks have this problem. Our mainstream banks have this problem. So what is happening with the infrastructure, the tech infrastructure, is also a problem. That's for the integration of the cashless policy. So now we're having that problem with integrating cashless policy into our economic model on one hand. And then you also have the issue of people losing trust as a result of the cashless policy, the cash crunch, which I believe was artificial. Because again, I do believe that the cash crunch that happened that time was also artificial and had political undertone also. So you see, but citizens don't factor, they're just concerned with my money. I want to access my money. So for instance, it's not that there is no cash. There is no cash going through the mainstream banking institutions. The central bank is saying that we have over 4 trillion in circulation. As of last year, it was 1.28 trillion. So year-on-year growth or year-on-year increment from 1 trillion to what? 4 trillion in circulation, because they are the ones, minting the money and giving to the bank. So they have the figures. But this same money is not returning back into the system. So there's a problem. It means that people are taking cash but are not returning same to the banks.
Now the question is why? You said it's a
trust deficit. There's a trust deficit, yes. There's a trust deficit. People, you see, if I deposit 100,000 and I go to the bank the next week and I want to get back my 100,000 naira in cash, the bank is telling me what? I only give you 10,000. I'm like, okay, no problem. I mean, there's an alternative. There's an alternative. So I could go and deposit it into one of these POS that also do not use mainstream banking too.
Right. Okay, so you said something regarding cashless policy. Now,
Yes.
I'd love us to talk a little bit on it. Do you think we're too fast in, implementing the cashless policy? Could that be one of the major reasons why we're going through all of this every single time? Because interestingly, this is not the first time we are experiencing something like this. Just as you said, in 2023, the similar thing happened, and now we're having similar situation occurring again. Let's talk about the cashless policy for a second.
Okay, so you see, the cashless policy was a great policy. I supported the policy. People might find it weird, but I understood the policy. When you understand something, you can now make informed decision about it. Cashless policy was going to integrate our economy in terms of data sets. We could know how much someone is earning. We could trace money, security issues. There was even reports that, in fact, kidnapping in the north, banditry went down during that cashless policy, if you noticed very well. Because there was no cash. People started using cryptocurrency exchanges to do whatever, and it's not really that easy, and it's not also anonymous. Anybody that knows cryptocurrencies know that if they are out to get you, they will get you. So the point is, the cashless policy had a lot of benefits. But the infrastructure surrounding that cashless policy, crumbled. And who do we have to blame? You don't have to also blame just the central bank alone. The bankers committee are also a part of the problem. Because you have, tech, those who work in the banking sector, but in the tech space, that's their online banking system and models, USSD and the rest of that, crashing every now and then. And then you also have these other parallel microfinance banks not crashing. Now you might say that they have more customers than the microfinance bank. But these days, I have a normal bank, but I also use one of those microfinance banks. You hardly find someone that does not have, one of these banks on the side, whilst they have their mainstream banks. But those other people, their model is what? Their accessibility and efficiency of their tech platforms. So they are more serious about putting in the manpower and equipping that manpower with requisite resources to be able to, meet with the demand. On the other hand, you also have mainstream banks, that are not putting in requisite resources and, manpower to cope with the whole pressure that they are going through. You understand? So for instance, if I do a transfer from one of the mainstream banks, Those takes 24 hours. In fact, sometimes 48 hours. Sometimes it takes me going to the bank to sort them out. But all these other banks that do not have physical, this thing, structures, if you're going to be surprised that they reverse almost immediately or 24 hours. Because because their business model is built on an efficient platform.
So is it a case of system upgrade? Because I also saw that the banking system upgrade is another major factor regarding the cash crunch now. So now you're saying this with the fintechs company having a swift and smooth flow of transfer with no form of glitches whatsoever, compared to the traditional banks. What really is the issue here? Really?
What I'm saying is this, that first of all, there is inefficiency in the mainstream banks. You understand? And inefficiency and, will I say, a lackadaisical disposition. That's what is happening right now. You're having 4 trillion, from 1 trillion to 4 trillion outside, not coming back into the system. It should trouble anybody. Yes, we know that there's also the whole fast and loose with the game at one part, or that's POS operators conniving the bank, bankers. But you can't tell me that it's on such a large scale for 4 trillion to be out of the banking system. No. There's also the problem that people are not going back to the banks.
Let's go back to the POS guys, the POS operators. Do you think they are taking undue advantage of the situation on ground?
When there's a problem, there's always a solution. People will always come up with you can call it exploitation. They will tell you they're offering a service. I will sit before you here, also use POS. You understand? You might call it exploitation, but at the end of the day, it is because there is a failure. There's inefficiency that has made people both inefficiency, and that inefficiency has now occasioned a trust deficit. People have now moved from the traditional banks to the microfinance and non-mainstream banking models, which is propelled by these, POS operators, that operate in that parallel, finance economy. So you see, there's this. In fact, when I was reading the report by, the bankers, not the bankers committee, there's the Association of Bankers. Now, they spoke about retailers of cash. There are some things that you hear in Nigeria, you become surprised. Oh, we're now retailing. When they say retailers, it means we're now buying cash. So we have retailers of, the retailers of cash are not bringing. So they are talking about the fact that Nigerians do not bring the banks to the mainstream. And then when the retailers of the cash, which is now in this question, the POS operators get the cash, they don't bring it into the mainstream bank. But the question is, why are we having retailers of cash? Something in the system is broken. You understand? Central bank is a policy formulating and regulator, policy formulating body and a regulator of the banking sector. You understand? It is both the banks, the bank for the bankers, and also the apex bank that makes regulation for the banks. You cannot excuse the central bank from all this. You cannot.
Do you think they're doing enough regarding the regulation of the system?
Well, it depends on what you think by doing enough. Look, you can come out and make announcements, and it was the same case.
Do they have an upper hand in all of this? Are they been able to control the situation even better? Because we've seen several cases of having different rules and regulation, do this and do that. Do you think it's even effective enough? Because just recently, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced a fine of 150 million naira on deposit money banks, found guilty of giving out illegal flow of mint naira notes to currency hawkers across the country.
Okay, so now we talked about sanctions, right? It's not the first time the central bank. I remember when under the former central bank governor, if there was this, if they don't reverse your money after a transaction, after I think 24 hours or something like that, they will pay. In fact, they will reverse the money with an added fine on it and the rest of that. It never saw the light of day. I attempted testing it. It never saw the light of day. After lodging my complaint and everything, I didn't see nothing. You understand? The question is not about bringing up sanctions on banks. It's about following through. And again, you can't go sanctioning banks for something that is also systemic. So there is a part of banks. So now, this policy will deal with currency, those who give money to, those who go to parties and clubs, currency hawkers, right? So this would handle them on one hand. But again, I say again, it is not 4 trillion naira they are using to go for parties. Some money is not coming back into the system. The question is, why? Banking is built on trust. Why do Nigerians not have trust in our banking system? Why is it that if I make a transfer and it doesn't go through the interbank settlement system, it doesn't get reversed almost immediately, right? When you address those issues, so you see, these are issues on various levels, When you address the issues, so you take away sanctioning the banks that collaborate with the currency hawkers on one side, perfect. Follow through with it, make examples of people. Make example of people on one hand. Then you talk about what are the inefficiencies in the system, mainstream banking. You call the bankers committee. What do you need? Do you need extra bandwidth? Do you need, a lot of things. We have people that are out of jobs in this Nigeria, So it also presents opportunity. The banks could take, contact universities, good graduates. I know they have to train them. So you have them in a cohort. You train them, you use them under an agreement basis. Maybe you have to work here for 1 year without leaving or 2 years without leaving. These are the benefits, these are this, these are that. To fill in for the brain drain that has happened in the banking sector. Not just banking, but the tech aspects of the banking sector. Those who service their technological, infrastructure. This is also an opportunity. When we see these problems, we don't see just a problem. We should see solutions for a problem. So the central bank has to sit down with the bankers committee or the association, have frank conversations. What is your problem? Because again, you cannot just go about wielding the big stick. You're building the big stick for the wrong reason is also a problem.
Well, so speaking about the central bank, having a roundtable conversation and also preferring solutions to all of this, because it's not the first time, it's not the, hopefully it should be the last, and to think it always happen during a specific period towards the end of the year. There's usually scarcity. If it's not fuel scarcity, it's cash scarcity, and right now we're experiencing one in Nigeria as we speak. Well, if you're just joining us, you're on to This Morning on ITV right here in our Lagos studio. We have been talking about the issue of the cash crunch in the country. We'll go off on a break now. When we return, we'll talk some more regarding the way forward. Thank you so much for staying with us. My name is Anu Stevens, live in our Lagos studio, and we are talking about the cash crunch situation. The CBN has come out to pick out certain individuals, saying the VIPs, even the banking system or a couple of commercial banks are one of the major culprits in all of this that we have been facing in the country, especially as we tend to move forward to the festive period. I still have my guests seated with me in the studio, so Priyala Membram, to talk about all of this some more. So now let's move over to the way forward in all of this, because during the conversation you kept on hammering on the trust issue and the trust situation. So how can the CBN, the banking system, build trust in an average Nigerian who has money and is a bit worried towards the festive period regarding, would there be cash crunch, would there be cash scarcity? How can the CBN really build trust?
Well, first of all, we have to address inefficiencies. That's the most important thing. The banking system, the enabling technological infrastructure that enables banking operation has to be overhauled. There has to be sort of, the central bank has to speak with the bankers committee and also the association of bankers and other associations. Get to know the problem. The first thing is if the technological infrastructures that enable the operation of these banks start functioning seamlessly. Because the cashless policy you want to implement is going to be hinged on that, on that lever. For instance, if I walk into a shop and I want to make, we've seen, people making seamless scanning transactions, we see on television outside Nigeria and the rest of that, right? It works based on technology, reliable technology, right? If that inefficiency, as much as transfer, USSD and application, is addressed, it brings back trust. If you say you do not want people to be using much cash, which I support, the cashless, going cashless, right? It's going to help us a lot. Data sets, crime, corruption, investigation, you name it. But it has, you don't just say go cashless without, okay, then how do we transact in a cashless society? The infrastructure, right? When you address the issues with the infrastructure, you've already begun building trust. Because people can know. Why do people need cash? It's because when they go to do transfer, it doesn't work. Even, see, if you are seeing someone that is unbanked and you're trying to convince the person, please open an account, come into the bank, the system of the bank, be within the fold. And they've already started hearing things like, I tried to do transfer, it doesn't work. It doesn't go. What do you want that type of person to say?
Your money is hanging somewhere.
You understand? And you're talking about maybe an old woman or someone that is not really that savvy, and you're telling her money is hanging. What? Please, I want to hold my cash. You understand? But once you've addressed that issue, you've built trust. You understand? Someone, we all have families, back at home in the villages and stuff. If you are saying, mommy, open bank. It's not like before. Now things go seamlessly. You teach them. And anytime they try, it goes. You've addressed one issue. The trust is being built. You understand? You put in place regulation that say, okay, this is a minimum over-the-counter withdrawal you can have. You stick to that regulation. If you're telling people that they cannot withdraw more than 10,000, 20,000 over the counter, fine. But can I make transactions seamlessly of 500,000 naira to somebody and it does not hang, as we like saying, it doesn't get through the interbank settlement system. You understand? And it doesn't get reversed, and I have to come and fill form and come back 14 working days, 7 working days, that kind of thing. So you see, once you've addressed that, that's on one level. Another aspect of this is also the, monitoring, of banks. Central bank has to increase monitoring of banks, their activities. There have to be a sense of, this is the amount we put out there. Cross-reference it by the data you have on, required cash in circulation. And you look for discrepancies. And you seek to audit those discrepancies. Something that will be, would be unannounced. And you make example of 1 or 2 banks. Everyone will sit up. We are human beings now. When you wield the big stick. But when you want to wield the big stick, make sure that you've given them all it takes to, to function. And then when you're wielding the big stick, Nigerians will even side by you and say, yes, you're right to wield the big sticks on this bank, or so bank on these banks or groups of banks. You understand? So once you've addressed those issues, the tech infrastructure that enables them work, you also issue of monitoring and enforcement of CBN regulations. I mean, it's going to help to build that trust. You understand? When, also enforcement will have to do with how banks are responsive to the plight of customers. I don't want to go to the bank and maybe I want to pay rent or something. And then these days people pay rent through the other parallel. I was surprised people pay rent through the other parallel distance. And then they have to write receipts and whatever. I'm shocked. This is something that, you go to the bank to pay, and then the bank gives you a receipt and you have that over, everything you do. But now they pay through and then they sign on it and they do a lot of things, to make it a little bit official and formal, But I don't want to pay rent and then my money doesn't go through. And then my landlord is telling me, I've not seen your money. It's 7 days. I will throw you out.
Right. It still boils down to the issue of trust that you've been talking about.
Yes, trust and building on what we have. Overhauling the system, right. Talking about the inefficiencies, making sure that those inefficiencies are removed off the way, enforcement and monitoring, also on one hand. You understand? So there's a sense of balance over time, over time. Because again, there's another aspect that we don't look at. We are using parallel banking, but most of us can't keep big money in those parallel banks. Again, so you see, so in as much as we do, there's a trust deficit on the other hand, we are also careful dealing with these other people too, because most of them we can't see them physically. You understand? Like, we can't walk in. You could walk into one of these banks and go and lay complaint, but you can't walk into these other banks. So we sort of be careful.
Now, speaking about being careful, I would love us to talk more regarding the people, Nigerians, the citizens, the persons who get to, have their monies in bank and all of that. Regarding the whole situation, how have Nigerians been faring in all of this? How has it been affecting Nigerians? Because there's this saying that says, when two elephants fight, the grass suffers for it. And during the course of the conversation, you said there's been a back and forth thus far in this situation. So how has it been affecting a lot of Nigerians?
Well, I mean, it complaints everywhere. I know what it took for me to get cash. I literally had to buy cash this morning before coming here.
You bought cash?
Because when I'm paying some amount of money for cash.
You're saying buying cash gives a different
but it's the
impression.
truth.
I think using the POS would be preferable.
I bought cash.
Okay.
Because they're talking of retailers of cash. I'm buying. How will I be paying? I mean, you want to collect 5,000. Someone is telling you have to pay 200. Someone saying 300 naira. You're going 10,000 and you're almost paying 6,000. You're buying the cash. It's not supposed to be, if in fact, point of sale terminals we are meant for, going. It came with cashless policy. That's how point of sale ATMs, point of sale in shops, which are like seen as smaller ATM versions of the ATM, where you go, you buy what is, you slide in your card and you pay. It wasn't meant, at the initial stage to, come withdraw and I give you cash. It wasn't meant. But everything that gets to Nigeria, we find a way around it. And the truth is that you cannot also say the bankers are not part of the problem. Central bank, part of the problem. Bankers, part of the problem. You understand? Nigerians are the ones suffering. At the end of the day, Nigerians are the ones suffering. The POS operators are just opportunists. And anywhere in the world, once there is an inefficiency and people are, in fact, business models have been built on inefficiencies of others. Once there's an inefficiency, someone comes up with a solution, makes money from it, And someone said, I saw someone on social media saying, in fact, people have dropped, their artisans have dropped their hammers and everything, and they're now taking up POS machines because seems it's even is now more profitable.
Right.
It's just like what we have had with the old issue of fuel scarcity and how people started selling fuel. Too. It's the same thing. So we've now gone from fuel scarcity to cash scarcity. And then the Bankers Association in their press statement said the central bank couldn't meet up with the quota or the cash demands rather. But again, I ask, was there no forecasting? Because this is not the first Christmas. Did Christmas start today? We are always saying in every season of, celebratory season, there's always a scarcity. But I always ask, if it has happened last year, it happened year before last, I mean, you should anticipate that it will happen this year. Especially if you're having such astronomical growth from 1 point something trillion to 4.30 trillion out of the banking system. So you should know that people are not bringing back money. What is happening? After you have that conversation, how do we mitigate? How do we address this? You understand? And if it's a problem of scarcity, which I believe is not a problem of scarcity, it's just a problem of people not bringing back money in, So if you believe that, okay, central bank can meet up the demand, what do we do next year to ensure that we have enough cash for hike in demand of cash during this festive period? You look at forecasting, right? But I don't believe that's the problem.
Right. So speaking of next year, do you think we're going to see and have similar situation occur again?
I can't say. I honestly can't say. But I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic.
Right.
But the truth is, everybody has to, buckle up. Everybody has to buckle up. Everybody has to ensure that they are playing their role. Regulators and the bank of the bankers, that's the central bank, the apex bank, has to buckle up. The banks themselves have to address issues of inefficiency in their system. So that way, we gradually rebuild the trust that has been eroded you know, and over time everything gets back to normal. Everything, we move from the whole issue of using parallel banking system and finance sectors to propel our economy. Those are, we are not meant for what we are seeing, you know, what we are having today, you know.
Right. Okay. Anyway, we have been saying a lot of things, and I feel it's an unending conversation, considering the fact that we are already in the festive period, and at this point, a lot of persons want to purchase stuff, to buy stuff, and definitely you need money. So this coming in again as at this period is really, truly not palatable. I have been talking to Supriala Membrane. He is an economic analyst, and we have been talking about the cash crunch situation, the CBN coming out to pinpoint and pick out the VIPs, and also a couple of banks as well being the major culprits in all of this. Let's just hope that we get a final and lasting solution to all of this, you know, menace in the banking system. I really must thank you, Supriala, for coming on the show today.
It was nice to be here.
Hopefully we have you some other time.
No problem.
Right. Anyway, that's our bit right here in our Lagos studio. My name is Anu Stevens.